Hello, everybody. My name is Jacqueline Janik, and I'm the preschool coordinator for the preschool. And we are going to talk about tools of the mind tonight. So let me present. And I'm doing it along with Barry Azzarello, our master teacher at Herbertsville, and Heather Scott, our master teacher at Warren Wolf. Hi, Kate. So again, hello everybody, and thank you for coming to our Parent Academy about Tools of the Mind, our preschool curriculum. In years past, we did this as an introduction, but now that your children have been in school for about 5 months, we wanted to go over the activities you may have heard your child talk about and explain to you why we do them and what they are. Barry, Heather, and I have each taken different parts of the day, and we'll go into more detail about each one. I'm going to begin with the activity that is done first each day in class, and that is called opening group. Opening group has many different components in a short amount of time. This part of the day is only 15 minutes long, which is the length of most of our activities. We don't do all of these activities each day, however. Opening group evolves as the year goes on to increase the challenge for students. Tonight, I'm going to go over a few of these activities. So these are typical activities that would happen during opening group. Some are, as the year goes on, we do some shorter, some longer, we eliminate some. So they are timeline calendar, weather graphing, attention focusing activities. Those are songs or finger plays or chants. Mystery game recap. Every day when the students come in, they answer a mystery question, and that can range from, are you wearing red today? To mystery shape, mystery number, mystery letter, rhyming. We have so many different mystery games that we play. Physical self-regulation, write along, share the news, rhyming game, takeaway sounds, and tallying. The first thing we do in opening group is the timeline calendar. You will notice that the calendar is linear and not a typical calendar. There are a couple reasons we use a linear calendar in preschool. The timeline is used because it's easier to understand. And since we are counting and practicing counting, it just makes more sense so the students can see all the numbers that we are counting. We also introduce and master vocabulary of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and days of the week. This is such an abstract concept, and having the calendar in one line helps students better understand those concepts of yesterday, tomorrow, today. We also only use one pattern on our calendar. And if you see at the top of this calendar, we have houses and buses. And it really just makes it more meaningful and personal because that really is what a child's world is: school days and home days. You will also notice under the numbers are pictures and balloons. We use these to talk about events that are happening, like birthdays or holidays. So for example, I just put, some balloons there that, might represent students' birthdays. And then I put a picture of Martin Luther King because that's why we have off on Monday. It helps drive the conversation of why do we have 3 days at home? Oh, it's Martin Luther King Day. Who is Martin Luther King? So we do this for all holidays and any events that we might have coming up. We also use these to work on even more counting concepts. We ask, how many more days until? So today I might say, how many more days until Martin Luther King Day? Or are there more days until my birthday or, Barry's birthday? So, the names would typically be. So I'm just going to walk you through the calendar, what the calendar is. So the teacher would say, all right, what month is it? Can anybody tell me what month it is? January, right? It's January. Do you hear that sound at the beginning? What sound is at the beginning of that word? Right. J makes the j sound. The teacher might say, can you think of any other words that start with that sound? So we are working on sound and letters right in our timeline calendar. Then the next thing, the teacher would point to the number and say, what number is today? And the children would, say 11 ideally. And we do this all chorally. So all the students are responding. We don't raise hands and take turns during opening group. 11, right? It is the 11. And what number was yesterday then? 10, right? And if it's 10, 11, what comes after 11? 12, right? Tomorrow will be 12. You're right. And then, and what day of the week is it? Is it yesterday was Monday, so today is, not Wednesday, maybe Tuesday. Yes, it's Tuesday. So then the teacher would cross out that number, and then they would count and clap to up to the number 11. All right, everybody get your clapping hands together, and we're going to count to number 11. And they would count up to 11. And we really focus on stopping at that number. And we're really intentional about that, because when children are given a bunch of objects and they have to do one-to-one correspondence about counting each thing, we want children to stop. You might see them count 1, 2, 3. They might have 5 things and you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then they go back 6, 7. So we really work on intentionally stopping on the number that we're counting up to. And then the teacher would say, all right, everybody, repeat after me. Today is Tuesday. And the students repeat, January 11, 2022. Right. And then I could also say, how many days are until Jackie's birthday? Or let's count how many days till Barry's birthday. Or how many more days do we have in school this week? A lot of different math concepts that we can work with. And if you notice, I didn't say the 11th or I won't say the 12th or 13th. We only say the number. We really, in preschool, are really just focusing on learning the number and the name of it. So by throwing in the teenth, it really might confuse them. So we really just say the number all year. The next activity usually done is weather graphing. Our curriculum introduces new concepts in meaningful ways. We use the weather to work on graphing and reading data. This can be used to teach many different mathematics skills, like how to display data. Also, skills that are really easy to comprehend, like more, same, and more difficult concepts, such as less, and few. This also presents an opportunity to discuss science concepts about weather. So for weather graphing, a teacher would say, all right, everybody, all right, boys and girls, put on your weather binoculars and look out the window and tell me the weather. Again, we do all of this chorally. Everyone's yelling out sunny, rainy, cloudy. And then the teacher would say, yes, it's rainy, or whatever the students say, or whatever the weather is. And the teacher would say, okay, tell me to stop when I get to rainy. And the teacher would start over at sunny on the left and move over to the right, just the same direction as you read. That left to right, starting in that left to right concept of pre-reading skills. And tell me to stop when I get to sunny. Stop! And teacher says, right, that's sunny. Okay, I'm going to mark one. There. And then the data reading begins. And students are asked some questions like, which one has the most? Or which one has the least? Are any the same? What do you notice? We don't ask all those questions at once, but those are just some of the typical questions we would ask about weather graphing. As the year goes on, these previous activities become short and may lose a little bit more focus to move on to others. An activity that is done all year, though, is share the news. This activity is great in terms of getting children to use language to communicate with other children. It sets them up for positive cooperative activities. It works on brainstorming and discussing ideas with others. By the end of the year, Share the News becomes a way children can discuss real social problems and concerns. So in the beginning of the year, we use this mediator card to help students remember the rules. So we would say to students, all right, make sure everyone has a partner. And at the beginning of the year, we may assign partners just so everyone's getting used to it. But as the year goes on, we really stop assigning partners and we want students to figure it out. This really helps with problem solving, shows empathy. For example, if if the teacher says, make sure everyone has a partner, and then Jackie doesn't have a partner, a student might say, oh, Jackie doesn't have a partner, but that's it. They don't have a solution yet. But as that student develops each day, they might say, oh, Jackie doesn't have a partner. Come join our group. Or they might recognize Jackie and Heather don't have partners. They can be partners together. So just even that one simple step, we're working on problem solving and self-regulation. So it would be make sure everyone has a partner, listen to today's topic. And the topics are, right now we're just in restaurants. So it might be, what is your favorite food to order at a restaurant? Or what is your favorite restaurant to go to? But it can even get into problem solving. The waitress drops all the food on the floor. What could you say to them to make them feel better? Then you think of something to say, and then you share it with your partner. And then as the year goes on, we increase the challenge by showing this card, and we call it double talk. So once they would tell their first partner, then we would say, all right, double talk. And they would turn to another partner and tell the same information to them again. And like I said, questions start out as simple, like, what's your favorite ice cream? Children love to talk about them and all of their favorite things. And it moves along to more complex questions like, you're on the playground and want to turn on the bike, but someone else is on it. What can you do? This activity really works on problem solving and really builds relationships in the classroom. Self-regulation is the main focus of our curriculum and embedded into all of our activities. Self-regulation, also called executive functions, is what we're using when we act in an intentional way or on purpose. It is something you use when you're trying to solve problems, figure out how to handle a social situation, or are confronted with learning new things. A student favorite to practice self-regulation is freeze dance. This may seem like such a simple activity, but students can learn so much and increase their self-regulation as the year goes on. This activity helps students to plan actions, inhibit their actions, act on purpose, and follow directions. In this activity, the teacher plays Greg and Steve's freeze dance song, and the teacher holds up different poses for each freeze in the song. There are different levels of poses for students to do. Each level has about 6 poses. So level 1 is simple poses with different arm positions, very basic, arms out to the side, out. So when the music freezes, they have to look at the teacher and see the pose. Level 2, the poses start to become more complex. They're crossing that midline across their body with their arms, and the same with level 3. There is also partner freeze. And just like in Share the News, we begin with assigning partners, but to increase the challenge, we don't assign partners, and students have to work to find a partner and do the pose. It takes a lot of self-regulation to do that. Know the music stopping, find a partner, and know the pose. An additional way to increase the challenge is with 2-step freeze. The teacher puts up 2 cards with a colored background. So for this example, their arms like an airplane is behind blue and arms straight out is pink. And the teacher has a pink and a blue paper in their hand. And when the music stops, the teacher holds up pink or blue. And then so the kids have to look at the teacher, say, oh, that's blue. Look at the board and go, oh, this is the pose for blue, and do that. Another skill we work on during freeze dance is subitizing. That's a big word, but it's basically, how you roll the dice and you can tell what number that is between 1 and 6. That's subitizing without having to count the dots. Subitizing is the ability to quickly recognize numbers without counting. We hold up cards with different objects on them, and when the music stops, the students have to count or subitize and hold up that many fingers. For example, with this card, the students would freeze and hold up 2 fingers. Again, as the year goes on, we increase the challenge with more difficult cards. Sorry, I hit the wrong button. And if you notice the cards in the beginning, they're in order, nice, simple. And then as it goes on, they get more difficult. It may only be a small amount of objects, but just kind of putting them out of place even adds more challenge to trying to subitize and see how many there are. An activity that is done toward the end of the year is called takeaway sounds. Takeaway sounds is for children to isolate initial sounds from the rest of the word and to delete sounds or segments of words and hold what is left in their working memory. For this activity, the teacher would show the picture and say, "This word is fish. See how I can break it apart and move the first sound away from the rest of the word? Ish. So when it's together, we say fish, and the teacher would put it back together. But when I moved it apart, I would say ish. So we're working on that sound and then having to hold in that ish, that I can't say the whole thing. I just can only say part of it. And then the teacher would do a second word. So again, what is this a picture of? It's a cat, right? It's a cat. So let's hear, what sound do we hear at the beginning? K, right? K, we hear k. And then what's the sound at the end? At, right? So when it's together, it's cat. But when we pull it apart, we hear k and then at. Then they would cover up one part of the word and have the students say what part is left. So ish, and they would kind of go back and forth to help really have them pull those segments of sounds apart. Then as the students get comfortable pulling the sound apart, the teacher increases the challenge to make new words. And the children absolutely love this at the end of the year. So for example, I just took the from fish and the at from cat, and I made fat. But a lot of the pictures don't make good regular words. They make nonsense words. So the kids think it's hysterical. If there's a picture of if we took fish and we took the and there's a picture of a king and we took the ing, now we have thing. And the kids just think it's absolutely hysterical to be making up nonsense words, and that helps them start creating different words too. So just them recognizing that sounds can be moved and pulled apart really is the beginning of reading and hearing sounds. So those are just some parts of opening group. Now I'm going to talk about play planning. Another part of our day is make-believe play, and there are 3 main components: make-believe play practice, play planning, and make-believe. I'm going to talk about play planning. During this part of the day, children do their own scaffold writing. They make a play plan, a plan for what role they will be in make-believe play that day, and what actions they will do in that role. Play planning develops self-regulation by helping children make a plan before they act, pausing to think about what's going to happen next, and making a plan for what you'll do is an important self-regulation skill. This also develops emergent literacy skills and phonemic awareness using the tools of the mind sound map to find sounds and letters to represent words. The students start by looking at the wheel, which you can see with the colors on it, and tell the teacher what their plan is. And our sentence starter is always, I am going to blank. And the students would tell you what their plan is. So for example, right now we are in restaurant theme, and most classrooms have a pizzeria. So their sentence might be, I am going to make pizza. And the students take the color clip. There's clips usually on this wheel. and then they take the same marker that coordinates with the clip that they chose, and they write their play plan on the paper you see on the right. So this is only about a half a sheet of paper. And the whole point is to start with a picture. So we want them to draw them and then what they're doing. So here I am, and I'm making my pizza. That's it. And we're just looking for simple drawings, a stick person, and just what you're doing. It could be anything what they do. And they could say, this is me, and I'm building a race car. And we'd be like, all right, that's your race car. That's fine. We don't go too much into detail with that. We just want to make sure that they're keeping in their working memory that they said that what they're going to do and who they are and what they're going to do. So it's me, and I'm making pizza. And then we do scaffolding with them, and I'll go into detail. You can see those letters on the right there. I will go into more detail with those. But once students have their picture down of a person and what they're going to do, we start working on lines. So then you would say to the student, excuse me, all right, write your lines. So I would say, I am going to make pizza. And there's my lines that I drew. And students might write pizza and have two lines. So there's conversations you can have with, well, pizza, even though it's a pizza, sounds like two words, it's one long word. So we can connect these two lines and make one long line. If they have too many lines, so after they write their lines, you say, all right, point to your lines and read your message again. Make sure you have the correct amount. And they would point to each line. I am going to make pizza. Maybe they have too many lines. So you could say, all right, cross it out. We all make mistakes. No big deal. Maybe they have too few lines. Oh, how many lines do we need to add? And we add that. Then this is how we scaffold the students. So PL is for plan. Can they just make a simple plan? I'm going to green. I'm going to orange. Great. They kind of scribble on their paper. They go on their merry way. Then we start working with them on their picture. And we just do one thing at a time. If they're scribbling and we want them to draw a person, we're not going to worry about the whole person. First, we're going to worry about the head. Can they do a circle? All right, around and close. Do your head around and close. All right, go. We want to see them doing that independent before we move on to the next thing or scaffold them to the next thing. So P for picture, once they have their picture and what they're doing. M is for message. And this is where if they said, I'm going to make pizza, and then they drew their picture, and then you come back to them and they're like, they didn't even draw their picture. They drew a picture and there's 4 people in it. And they're like, this is my mom. This is my dad. This is my brother. So they're not holding that plan in their working memory. So they are not ready to move on to message. So you would want, when you come back to them, you would want them to be saying the same message to you again. They held that in their working memory. I'm going to make pizza. The L is for lines, which I just demonstrated and talked about. And once they have those lines down and they always have their word to line match, you would move them on to initial sounds. So for example, I would do with the student, I would write in, I am going to make pizza, pizza. What letter does pizza start with? And then we have a sound map, which you'll see in my videos. And we go over, is it does it pizza sound like potato or monkey? And there's pictures associated with those letters. Potato, pizza, potato, monkey, which is the same. Potato, right? So you're going to write the letter P. And we start with initial sounds. So now the student is writing all their initial sounds. Then we move on to ending sounds. Then we move on to those pesky middle sounds. All those vowels are super tricky. They all kind of sound the same. And then we move on to alphabetic principle. So that's writing a sentence with, I is capital, all of our other letters are lowercase, working on alphabetic principle with them. Most of our students that that we send up to kindergarten are at initial sound, ending sound, and that is wonderful for our kids going to kindergarten. And now I'm going to just show you.
Remember, you can look at your pictures from yesterday, or you can take a look at these to try to figure out your plan. List here.
Just so you can see the differentiation that happens during all of our play
today. Eva, what's your plan? What are you going to do that? What's your plan today, Eva? What are you going to do?
So she takes her clip.
You're going to go shopping?
She said, I am going to go shopping. And then she picks her orange marker and she draws her picture. Now you see this student needed a little bit more support of what to do in that center. So the teacher's supporting that student.
Water the flowers? Okay, can I see a nice picture of you watering the flowers? Great, Layla. Round the flowers. Good job. Say with me. I like your shirt. Going to stock the food. Good. Can I see some of your food in that picture? That's a perfect picture. Is that Bryson? Go ahead, go water the flowers. Nice job, Bryson.
So you notice she was just working on pictures with that student. So once he was there, that was her scaffold for the day, and she can go.
Perfect. Go ahead, you finish your word. Tell me your message. And then you finish your card. Good job. For the ingredients, all right. Go ahead, go shopping for the ingredients and go make those yummy cookies.
So you can see the teacher's scaffolding and really differentiating for every student and meeting them exactly where they are and giving them just a little bit of extra support to help all of our students be successful. And then this video I just took the other day just so you can see different sorts of play plans that are coming out. So here's a student who's just writing their lines and the teacher will go back and scaffold. This student, if you see, has all like initial and some ending sounds on their play plan. This student has a lot of words to write. And then this is our sound map that I was discussing. So this, so that student obviously did not need a sound map before that had initial and ending sounds. And now this student is using the sound map because that's where she is developmentally, and we are meeting her right where she is developmentally. And she's sounding out her words. And this student, again, is just beginning her initial sounds. And she's, she kind of has gotten stuck and she's waiting for some more support. Now I'm going to go to Miss Barry.
Hello, everybody. I am going to talk about our small group math and science activities. So all of the activities we'll talk about tonight are all done in a small group. Usually our teachers will run one group and our paras will run the other group. And then they switch so that everybody gets to work with everybody. Our math activities will focus on number sense, geometry, and measurement. And they are broken down into components and introduced and practiced systematically to build on those skills. And in science, we focus on building everyday concepts with experiencing different objects and processes that you'll see in the natural environment. So we learn science concepts, we learn to observe, describe, and represent observations. We apply measurement and learning foundations of inquiry. So that's what these activities are all going to focus on. All right, so our first activity is remember and replicate. This is an activity we start in September and we will roll through the whole year, and we build upon this basic plan right here. And we use our Play-Doh, our blue mats, and our hand and check cards. Hand and check cards you're going to see throughout a lot of our small group activities. That is a great mediator for kiddos to know whether they're working, they have the hand card, or if they're checking, they have the check card. And that also gives them practice in turn taking, waiting their turn, and knowing exactly what their job is. We focus on private speech with this. We do a lot. Every activity that I'm going to talk about has an element of self-regulation to it. So that waiting, the turn taking, being able to control what you're doing and work on that while you're having a good time and having fun and learning different concepts. So this uses shapes, positions, ordering for math. We use mental visualization. We use that working memory. And then we use Play-Doh forms to create different patterns. So what's going to happen in this is the teacher will hand out the materials, and the teacher at first has the hand card, and she's going to start. And at the very beginning, it's very basic. We're just learning how to play with Play-Doh. You'll notice there's that black circle on the top corner of the board. That's the home dot. So when kids aren't using their Play-Doh goes on the home dot, which is another huge self-regulation piece because everybody wants to touch their Play-Doh all the time. And we use 3 basic shapes. You'll see we have the pancake, which is the flat circle. We have the ball, which is obviously a ball, and then we have the snake. And when we're making these, we're making pancakes, we're saying flat, flat, flat. So we always pair physical with an auditory. And then when we're making the balls, we say around, 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 and then snakes are roll, roll, roll. And roughly those are the words. Every teacher uses pretty much the same words throughout the whole year. And then we can use those materials. Once we've made those shapes, you can make a lot of pancakes. You can make a lot of balls. You can make a lot of snakes. And then we are able to use them with patterning, with positional words. And once the teacher has the array out on their board in front of them and has their hand card, they cover up their pattern. The kids haven't even touched their Play-Doh at this point. They cover it. The kids have to remember what they saw, and they replicate it on their own board. And then they get the check card out, and that's when they get to check against the teacher, and did they make the same thing as the teacher. This is great also for fine motor skills. This is great for kids that have sensory issues. Not everybody likes to touch Play-Doh, so it's a great way to introduce that. And we increase the challenge throughout the year by using those patterns. And the board on the right, sorry, Miss Jackie, the board on the right you'll see has the arrow and the 3 columns. So we can also do first, next, and last. So we can throw that concept in there. All right, our next activity is making collections, one of my favorites. So you'll see with this, we have that hand and check card is back again. We give each group, we pair the kiddos up. Each group of students gets a bowl of counters, which you'll see in that little green dish. They get a purple or a colored cup that's empty, and then they get a stack of cards. And these counting cards have different objects on them that relate to all of our different units. So you'll see the pizzas, that would be, restaurant time. There's a medical bag, we'll use that during our medical theme. There's candy, we might have used that during the grocery store. So all the cards are different. Some of them, the pizzas are very basic. There's 4 pizzas on that card. The candies you'll notice are in an X. As you go through the year, the arrays will change. You might have circles, you might have X's. And then even more challenging, you might have a variety of objects. So there might be a card with ambulances and airplanes. So that would be a different kind of collection that we would do. So these are all for meaningful counting. We're representing quantities with objects. We're using one-to-one correspondence. We're using language. That whole concept of too few or too many is a big deal. And there's that self-regulation and turn taking. So when you get your kids paired up in this activity, one of your students has the hand card, one of your students has the check card in that pair. The person with the hand card is actually going to be doing the counting, and the person with the check card is going to check their work. So the person with the hand card would take one of those object cards, and they would figure out how many objects are on that card, and they would count that number of counters into the cup, and then they pass it to their partner who's the checker, and they ask their partner to check, and then their partner just has to match one-to-one correspondence, one counter on each object on the card. So this is a great way you can pair up different level learners, because one of our earlier learners might not be counting up to 10, but they can put one counter on each object on the card. So you can mix your groups that way. And then the person that's counting, if their cup is empty when they're done, if they've checked and there's nothing left in there, then that they can tell their friend, oh, you got it right. Or if they don't have enough or they have too many, they can let their partner know. So that is making collections. And then we increase the challenge with that, with the different number of objects. We go higher, and then we actually add in a category. and we would give category cards out where, so like a card that has ambulances and airplanes, that category, you might only be counting the things that are on land. So they would only be counting the ambulances. They wouldn't be counting the airplanes. All right. Numerals game. I'm going to show you these videos. We can actually start with the videos and you can see, and then we'll talk about them.
You see 10 there, Logan? All right. So now, let's see if John is right. You're the checker, so let's put...
So you can see in this, the kids, again, have those hand and check cards. They have an empty cup. They have a stack of numbers, and then they have that checking card that's got all the numbers and the dots on it. So they pick the number that they want. They have to identify that number. They count the correct number of counters into their empty cup. What we're working on now, she has passed along, because her buddy there is the checker for this one. So she knows her number. She is putting her counters into her cup. She's got the hand card. She knows what she's doing. She's going to pass it along, and he is going to check. So he now has to match. She's helping him with. He has to match and put the counters on the correct number with the right dots, and then that way he's able to check her work.
Johnny, I'm seeing if you're correct. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right, so that was one there.
You see 10 there, Logan? All right.
And then good job. Like this partnership, they knew exactly what, they've done this before. They're one of those little kiddos is a returner, so he's familiar with the game from last year. So they just roll right along and they switch their cards back and forth. This kind of a game allows them to not have a whole lot of wait time. They can work at their pace because they're just given a stack of numbers and they just keep moving right along. And they can play it as many times as they want. So this one, again, is meaningful counting. So the teacher might pair this up with a story. So we're at the grocery store and we need to pick out, we need to get 8 apples. And that's, they're going to count to 8. They're going to, those counters become apples that they're counting out to purchase when they're at the grocery store. This numerals game also lets them associate their numerals and the correct number of objects. We're representing quantities with objects. And again, we're using that too few, too many language within those partners, and that self-regulation is a huge piece of that as well. All right, our next one up is Science Eyes. This Science Eyes can be done in a couple different ways. This is where we learn about our environment, where we explore what's going on around us, and we can see what's happening in our world. So we're attending to small details with this. We're strengthening oral language and vocabulary skills. We're practicing conversing on topic, which in a preschool classroom is a huge challenge because we start talking about one thing and before you know it, we've started talking about snowmen, and then we are on to what's going to happen in the summertime when you're at camp, or this last time that I went to the restaurant with my mom. So our conversations can really run all over the place. And then there's that whole reciprocal conversation, taking turns with their friends, acting independently within the group. So we have at both schools, we have boxes and bins of different collections of things. This one in the pictures is a collection of Christmas ornaments. There are seashells, there's a box of jewelry, there's a box of hair clips. So you would take this collection into the classroom and students would have mediator cards for this as well, which is a little magnifying glass. It's so they know that they're looking for details. They want to really check this out. So the teacher might start with a story about something related to the collection that they're looking at. You'll also see this done with scaffolded writing paper. So similar to what Jackie was talking about with play planning, we would also write about what we see in science. You would present the collection on the table. So if this was my collection, I would put the bin on the table. Students would be able to touch everything. They'd be able to observe it. They'd be, again, working with a partner so that they can talk about what they see. We would emphasize the vocabulary. Each of our sets of collections has a really good chunk of vocabulary, different words you can talk about. Ooh, is it shiny? Ooh, is it glittery, smooth? All those different description words you want to talk about. Each pair of kiddos will look at 3 to 5 objects, and then they're going to draw about it. So we go back to that play planning piece, that same idea. So they're going to draw about what they saw, and if they're there, they're going to write about it. You might write for them, write about what they're seeing, or if they have the ability, they're going to write on their own. We also will add sense mediation cards to this. So we have the 5 senses represented in a card. So they might be just using their smell and their sight sense to do science eyes this time. So you want to explore the different senses, or add touch. Today we're just going to talk about how it feels. Let's touch all of these different ornaments and see how they feel. Ooh, this one's bumpy, this one's scratchy, things like that. And we also use this same principle with different experiments. So big fun ones in preschool, sink and float. Very simple bucket of water and all kinds of stuff that you can put in it. We might observe living things. So we usually get, we'll have butterflies in our classroom so we can watch them start we get them as caterpillars. They get to watch the whole process. Plants is another great one. We usually do some seeds in the spring. Perfect timing, snow melting. Bring in snow from the outside and see what happens when you bring it inside. Shadows is another great one. Going outside and, exploring things in our school environment that we can then document and write down. So those are some examples of our science size activities. And then Wenger drawings. So this is another fun one. This is one we're kind of rolling into right about this time of year. This is a good time to start talking about our basic shapes. We use these shapes as building blocks in pictures, and it gives us perspective on what you see in your world. So things aren't just circles and squares and rectangles. Things become the clock on the wall, or the square on the carpet, or the rectangle sign that you see, or the Chinese food box. So everything relates to something in their world, and that is how they get those concrete representations for them. And they're going to use the shapes, and they're going to build pictures. So the picture on the left, you'll see, actually was just done. One of the classes did it yesterday. Their shape was a diamond, and she turned it into a window. So if you see, she drew the rectangle around it, and that became her window. Sometimes some of the kiddos were turning their diamonds into kites. So again, this might start with a story, and they can draw. They work on scaffolded writing with this. They draw whatever they see. They talk about positional words, so they can turn the paper around in different directions. And if the square is on the bottom of the paper, what do you think you can make out of this? And again, they do as much writing with it as they can, as they are ready to do whenever their development is there. And then we step it up into collage, where they can then cut the shapes out and use multiple shapes to make different kind of pictures. So that also works on their fine motor skills with their scissor skills, their drawing. We add in glitter and sequins and things like that they can create different collages with those shapes. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Heather.
I'm going to remember to unmute myself. Another part of the activities that we do in large group literacy, we rotate between 2 activities, being graphics practice and buddy reading, which we'll go into after. And then we have some small group literacies. So the literacy activities in the tools of the mind focus on oral language, vocabulary development, phonological awareness, book handling skills, comprehension, both listening and reading, and writing. These concepts are broken down into different activities, which we're going to introduce, and are practiced in a systematic way. So graphics practice is one of the large group activities that we do. It has, it goes to music as they work on private speech, which in preschool talking is thinking. So they're taught, to use private speech to make them remember what's coming next. We also have a lot of self-regulation built into our activities. So in graphics practice, there is instrumental music, and they know and learn to stop and to start on cue to follow the directions to make certain shapes that they're able to bring into their play plans, or are able to bring into their letter formations once they start doing their scaffolded writing. It works on increasing their working memory with multiple steps. In the beginning, it starts with level 1. So they'll start with just around and close, and they're encouraged to use those words to remind their brain what they want to do next. So I think that Barry put a little video on there so you can see graphics practice in action.
I don't hear any music either.
But as you can hear, they assemble in a large group, usually on the carpet. You can be on a table with whiteboards, markers, and erasers.
Around and down, around and down.
And as you can hear in the background, you hear that's the private speech that they're encouraged to say. So here they're making the candy cane. And there's probably music. I know it's kind of hard to hear, but as the music is going, the children are making the same shape. So they're saying around and down, around and down, around and down.
Around and down.
And then you'll hear the music stop. And so this is where it helps with their self-regulation. When the music stops, they learn to stop making the shapes. I know it's hard with the sound. I don't know if I can hear it. Jackie hears it better.
Noah, don't erase. I want to see how good.
And so that's how you would see it. You would hear a stop in the music, and they would know to stop, to hold up, if they're holding up their markers or putting their markers and showing their boards. So that is the graphics practice, which we take those into our play planning, which is the first form of writing. Gotcha. The next large group literacy activity is buddy reading. In buddy reading, a pair of children read books to each other, initially labeling the pictures and then retelling the story using the visual mediator cards called lips and ears that you can see there on the page. The lips and ears cards are a visual representation that help children exercise self-regulation by reminding them to stay in their role of reader or listener. During buddy reading, the teacher asks children to select a book and then intentionally pairs children by handing out those lips and ears cards that you see. Once children are settled into the roles, the teachers will then scaffold each pair's interaction and oral language. At the halfway mark, if the children haven't switched their books or they rotated their roles, the teacher will tell them to do so then. The purpose of buddy reading in school is to help beginning readers learn how to handle books. It strengthens their oral language skills and helps them to build vocabulary, engage in comprehension strategies when they recall story elements from a book, and they're practicing conversating with their peers while engaging in a positive social interaction. So research has shown, that children need a variety of different experiences with books before they can learn how to read. So while many of these young children might read with their parents at home, they're usually watching as an adult reads. And this provides them the opportunity to get to be the reader. So at home, this could look like if you find your child's favorite picture book and you take a picture walk through the book, but you let your child tell you what's happening on the pages and walk through and it starts off in the beginning like, oh, I see a red dog, or I see, green flowers. And then eventually it gets to them telling, I see a red dog walking through a park with green flowers. And we're not looking for them to look at the words. The very first part of reading is being able to take that picture walk through the book. So some of the literacy activities else that we do, they're more in a small group format. So this is our Story Lab. This is done in a small group format. So Story Lab is an interactive reading activity in which children listen to stories for a purpose or specific comprehension strategy in mind. And then they answer questions that engage them using that strategy. It typically starts off in a small group to maximize child engagement, and then later it can be moved to a large group setting to increase the challenge or the self-regulation that's big in preschool for us. Children learn to talk to each other about the story and explain their thinking to their peers, and teachers are encouraged to read traditional stories, both fiction and nonfiction. The Story Lab provides practice, again, in these oral language, listening comprehension of fiction and nonfiction text, and the development of 8 unique comprehension strategies. So the strategies, or the 8 strategies that we work on in preschool, are active listening, connections, character empathy, vocabulary, learning facts, story extensions, story grammar, and predictions. So although each of these story activities has a specific purpose in mind, all of the activities help children learn to listen with a purpose, to remember on purpose, or to recall story elements like the main character, the setting, the plot of the story. It helps them to expand on their working memory, or holding more than one idea in your mind at a time. It strengthens those oral language vocabulary skills, and it helps to expose children to different genres of books. So you might see fairy tales, you might see some some nonfiction, or you might see some fiction stories. So today we're going to explore 2 of these strategies in further detail, which is active listening and story grammar. These are the only 2 story lab activities where the teacher or the adult will read the book all the way through without interruption. This is so that children can focus and sustain their attention in a continuous way. In other story labs, you may stop at predetermined times within the book. Like in vocabulary, you would have predetermined like 3 or 4 vocabulary words that you wanted to focus on, and you would stop at that point in the story. So only during active listening or story grammar do you read the entire way through. So active listening is a story lab where the teacher starts introducing and reviewing this mediator card that you can see here on the side. She starts off on the back. There's a prompt for them, but she may say, you see these 2 children, they're reading a book about cats. And I can see that the little boy is thinking, what part did I like the best? And he's thinking, I like the part where the cat was taking a nap on the rug the best. And the little girl is thinking, I like the part where the cat is playing with a ball of yarn the best. So today when we read this story, if you give a moose a muffin, I want you to be thinking, what is your favorite part, or what part did you like the best? So if the book is new, the teacher can read the title, the cover page. We talk about Illustrator. And at the end of the story, she will present this mediator back to them again, which is this visual representation to remind them what they're focusing on. And she will have them turn and talk with each other about what their favorite part is. So the children they know to pair with each other from share the news in the morning. We do a lot of turn and talk in preschool. And then they will conversate with each other as the teacher goes around and listens to the different conversations with the students. When time's done, she will signal all the kids to look back at her, and then she will summarize some of the things she heard. So she might say, I heard that somebody's favorite part was when the dog took a walk. I heard somebody's favorite part was when they were running through the park. And she'll summarize a few of the different favorite parts of the book that she heard. This is important. Active listening is important because it helps preschoolers and children to remember and reflect on a story. And it helps them to start discussing their opinions. They understand that this is an opinion about that not everybody is the same. They have different ideas. So the other story lab that we are going to discuss today is story grammar. So story grammar consists of 2 consecutive activities. They can happen either in the same day, in the morning and then in the afternoon, or they can happen, one day after the next day. So they utilize books that have very clearly defined characters, setting, and a plot. So you want to make sure that you use a book that really goes into the character explanation, and there's pictures where they can see where the story takes place, and has a clearly defined beginning, middle, and end of the story. So in the first session, the teacher will start by introducing and reviewing the story grammar discussion mediator card that you see there. And she might also introduce, if they haven't met before, this tiger that's over here is kind of like a puppet. Sometimes they call him Forgetful Frankie, Forgetful Fiona. Everybody's kind of got a different name for him. But the thing about Forgetful Frankie is that he forgets a lot. So he doesn't remember things in the story. So the teacher will read the book in its entirety, because Forgetful Frankie might not remember if the story gets interrupted. So after reading the story, the teacher will ask to hear what Frankie remembers, such as who the main characters were or where the story took place, and the sequence of events. Sometimes Frankie will get forgetful, and he will forget recalling some of the story, and the children will respond to Frankie either confirming that he's right or that he's incorrect in his responses. So there may be a puppet or a stuffed animal with them, and if the story was about the moose, if you give a moose a muffin, she might say, oh, and when we gave the dog a muffin, and that's what Frankie would be saying, and the kids would be saying, no, Frankie, it was a moose. Like, so they're getting interrupting. They're learning that it's okay to make mistakes in the classroom and that we work together through those problems to fix that. So after reviewing some of the story elements, the teacher will model private speech and mental planning as the class works together to create story picture cards. So story picture cards are just a couple of events for the story. If you have a lot of 4-year-olds or if you're a little younger, probably about 4 different pictures of what happened within the story. And then they will put them in order together about what happened at the beginning of the story, what happened in the middle of the story, and what happened at the end of the story. And then that concludes the end of the first lesson for story grammar. But on the second day or later on that afternoon, when they chose to do the next session, the teacher, if it's later that afternoon, you could probably get away with just doing a picture walk through the book again. If it's the next day, depending on your class, you might have to read the book again just to remind them what the story was about. And you would show them the story event cards out of order. So again, Frankie forgot overnight the order of the story, and the teacher would be working with forgetful Frankie, and the children would help Frankie correct the sequence of events of the story. So maybe the first picture was the end of the story where they gave him, I should have picked the book that I remember because I don't remember what they gave the moose the muffin at the end. And they would be like, no, Frankie, that didn't, at first they gave him the muffin. And they'll put that in the beginning. They'll work together to correct the sequence of events within the story. And all of this is done choral responses of not taking turns. So the children, again, are working on that self-regulation piece. And again, learning that making mistakes, it's okay in the classroom. That's part of learning. And we're using the book to check the facts and thinking about the story in a systematic way in there. Again, Story Lab grammar is important because it helps listening and comprehension strategies. It again strengthens oral language skills and builds vocabulary. It develops beginning summary skills by recalling those main events rather than just using the specific examples from a book, like looking at the pictures or the exact words. And it practices a new participation style because they do learn to take turns and build off of each other's ideas. So if somebody remembered something at the beginning of the story, they're like, oh yeah, that's right. And then they learn to work together to solve the problems within the stories. So those are the two large group activities that we do. We switch back and forth between the small, I got mixed up, that this is a small group activity for literacy. And now we're gonna go on to the Alcona Boxes. So Alcona Boxes, again, is another small group activity. It's broken up into 2 different games. So most of us, I think, are familiar with the Alcona Boxes where you slide the tokens in. We also have another one called Jumping the Sounds. So these are 2 different games that children use to focus on specific parts of a word. And we use mediators, gestures, and private speech while developing phonemic awareness and practicing the alphabetic principle. So some children need this extra support to develop this alphabetic principle, and it is the purpose of these games, Alcona Boxes 1 and 2. This is only appropriate if most of the students in the classroom are at the initial sound stage in the play planning papers that Ms. Jackie talked about earlier, in their scaffolded writing plans, which means they're able to identify most of the first sounds in their writing without assistance, without help. So the first game that we do play is Jumping the Sounds. So Jumping the Sounds is a small group activity that uses fine and gross motor gestures to accompany phonemic segmentation practice with the support of a greater shared activity. The teacher has the children stand in line so that they are viewing boxes on the floor from left to right order, and then he or she jumps the first Alcona box pointing to the picture. When they're jumping, they learn to make these different gestures. So in the beginning, if we were to say the word cat, they would put their fist, I know in foundation, so if you have older children, they tap out sounds like this, so it's very similar to that. They would use their fist to say the entire word, cat, and then we would tap out each individual sound and go, cat. And that's what the children who are watching their friend jumping are doing. They're using those gestures in that private speech to break apart those sounds as the child is jumping from sound to sound on there. And those are the different gestures that they use within there. Once the child jumps through, as you can see in the picture, they have like a purple box in the beginning. That's where you would say the word in its entirety. And then each one of those orange boxes is a different sound within the letter or phoneme that the sounds, the words make. And then when they're done, they'll go sit down and the teacher would show a different card where the next child would jump out the sounds to the next word. You can increase this challenge by, if you start with 3 phoneme sounds to 4, and that will help increase the challenge while they're working on the private speech. The second Alcona box game that we have is the token game. And this is where children push symbolic tokens to separate the sound. So this is like the traditional Alcona boxes, if you've ever seen that, where they're pushing the tokens into the sound. Again, they're using those specific gestures that we use, which is a little bit different, but the same thing. They're putting their fist down for the entire word. So that's a picture of a dog. They would put their fist down, dog, d, g, right? And then they would say dog again and put their fist down at the end to blend all of those phonemes together to make a word. So the token game is a small group activity that uses fine motor gestures alone with less support than jumping the sounds. The teacher pairs the children and provides them with the roles of either a teacher or a student. So much like we saw the hand and the checker, they have roles within here. Each pair gets 2 Alcona box cards, and the extra cards are placed in the center of the table for children to get as needed. The children playing the role of the teacher place 1 token below each box and then point to the picture. Both children will read or say out loud what the picture is. So they would both say dog. And the child playing the role of the teacher then pushes the tokens into the box as both children say each sound. As the teacher role is pushing the tokens, the student role is making the gestures for the sounds, which are the same as we used for jumping the sounds. Alcona Boxes games 1 and 2, which are the jumping of the sounds, and the token games help children learn that words can be divided into phonemes and how to identify these phonemes sequentially and to blend them to make a word. Being able to blend these individual phonemes helps children to become fluent in segmenting or breaking apart the words that they will use in their scaffolded writing, which carries over to their play plans. And as you heard before, when we use finger drawings or scaffolded writing is when we write in preschool. And those are our small groups, some of our small group literacy activities that we do in preschool.
So that concludes our Tools in the Mind activities. And this is just a small window into everything that we do every day. So if you have any questions, you can ask us now, or you can also email any of us at any time. So did anybody have any questions? All right, if not, like I said, we're always here. You can reach out to us. You can email us or call us at our respective schools. And we hope you had a great night, and thank you for joining us.